Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're going to get started. Yeah, I think we're all friends. It's a small room, so we can sit together. So my name is Naya Abagi, and I am currently serving as the lead for the Efficiency for Access, working at CLASP as a senior manager. Thank you all for coming. I know it's been a long week, and this is a hard session because it's right after lunch on the last day, and so we really, really appreciate you coming here to talk about a very important topic. And so for me, when I really think about quality assurance, right, it's not about regulation, it's not about making it harder to do business, it's really about consumer protection. So how are we ensuring that the investments that these consumers are making are actually going to serve them and serve them for a long time, right? And as we move them up to increasingly more expensive assets, how do we make sure that we're not creating more e-waste? How do we make sure that it's really meeting the services that they want? And to be able to really grow this, to grow this sector, a sector that's very dependent on word of mouth, it's really important that we are driving from all directions and ensuring good quality products are reaching end consumers. So I'm really excited about this session, actually. So our speakers today are actually two of my favorite people, and I'm not just saying that, but it's true. I think we have Elisa Lai, who is a manager of VeraSol, works at CLASP, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in more detail, and Dr. Annie Jacobson, who is the technical lead and co-manager for VeraSol as well. So first up, we're going to begin with a quick Slido, which, given that the room is so small, we could almost just put up our hands. But we want to know who's in the room and who are you representing. So if you can quickly hop on Slido and respond to the poll, will be great. So first question up, what is your primary professional affiliation? We'll just give it a minute for you to log on. We're going to look at the head counts. Yes. This is a requirement. We won't let you out of the room. Association. Yeah. Drew, you're represented. No. Okay, so it looks like we are evenly represented. We have some of the private sector, we have NGOs, we have standards bodies. That's good. Next question, please. So we really want to know what is your knowledge of VeraSol? How would you rate yourself? By the end of this session, you want everybody to be an expert. There's going to be a test.
Yay. Job done.
Okay, good. So everybody's a little bit familiar. That's great. And so really the purpose of this session is, we really want to get your feedback on a lot of new things that are going to be proposed. And the nice thing about having a small forum is that we can really engage in dialogue. So, Arnie and Elisa are going to have some presentations, but really we welcome questions, and we really want to have a very, very lively Q&A at the end. So please write down your questions, and yeah, I'll hand it over to Elisa.
Great, thanks, Naya. Can we pull up the slides, please? And in the meantime, because we have such a small group, can I encourage the people in the back kind of move forward a little bit so we can see your faces? And I promise I won't call on you to test your knowledge about VeraSol. Maybe, yeah. Where do I aim? Nope. Not working. Yeah. but I don't know where to aim to get it moving. Oh. Perfect. All right, so based on like the slide results that we just do, it seems like everyone already have some familiarity with VeraSol program. And so really the next section that I will be doing is to quickly introduce VeraSol, so just so that all of us are on the same page. And before I dive into it, Naya has already gave us a very brief introduction. But again, my name is Elisa Lai. I work for CLASP and manage. I'm based in Washington, D.C. and managing the VeraSol program, working very closely with the Sheds Energy Research Center led by Arnie right here. All right, so just to very quickly go through the agenda today, we will briefly introduce what is VeraSol, moving into what are some of the new and exciting things about VeraSol, what current challenges that we're facing, and also what's next for us. And like, you know, we really do want your input on especially the what's next session, and so hopefully there will be really great discussion. And, you know, because we have such a small group, if there's any questions, we're happy to kind of pause and have a discussion. All right, so what is VeraSol? So VeraSol is a global program that delivers quality assurance services for modern energy solutions, and that includes everything from solar energy kits to appliances to productive use equipment. And VeraSol work with market actors to leverage quality assurance resources in a couple different ways, right? So for example, we create comparable product data on quality and performance, enable market stakeholders to make smart decisions about product and investment. We work very closely with financer, investor development programs to use QA, leverage QA in their due diligence process, and help them mitigate the investment risk. We also ensure that the product sold to customer is living up to certain expectations, and so the customer can enjoy high quality energy service and also like getting the impact from using these off-grid solar solutions. We bring all the QA resources for solar energy kits and appliances under one single platform, and that's VeraSol, and ensure you all can like easily find information on the same place. And this is just to briefly touch on our history, where we came from. The VeraSol brand might be still new to some of you all, but really we built on very rich history of designing and delivering quality assurance services to the off-grid sector. VeraSol formerly, very long time ago, was part of the Lighting Africa program and later become the Lighting Global Quality Assurance. As the market continue to transition and grow, we also see the need for program to adapt and change. In 2022, we actually launched the new VeraSol Quality Assurance Program, and that's continued to deliver the very same quality assurance service that we always deliver to the market for solar energy kits, but then also merging with another appliance testing program that's under the Efficiency for Assets and Global Leap. And so we bring in these two programs together, providing a more comprehensive quality assurance services to the sector that kind of covers a lot more things. And today, the VeraSol program is funded by various partners, including the World Bank Group, the IKEA Foundation, UK Aid, Good Energy. And so these are still our key stakeholders and partners in supporting the VeraSol program. All right, and so some of our solutions and services, when we talk about certification, I think a lot of time, when we talk about quality assurance, I think a lot of time like kind of jump to like certification is the one thing, right? But really, for VeraSol, like we provide a pretty comprehensive solution and services tackling a couple different things. For example, we develop test method and quality standards to make sure that we kind of define the product quality and know how to measure them, right? But we also manage the certification process to making sure that the product is like meeting those quality standards. We conduct appliance testing to assess the quality and performance of off-grid appliances, so things like TV, fans, refrigerators, solar water pump, but also expand it even further to productive use. we share the results of testing and certification on the VeraSol product database, which is an online database. It's completely free and interactive, so market actor can easily go on to the database to identify products and compare them. We work with test laboratory a lot, supporting them to build their capacity, but also ensuring the market actor can have easy access to all of these testing resources. We work with governments and policymakers to make sure, to help them adopt quality standard, also implement them to protect their market and consumers in their markets. We work with stakeholders a lot, and so that includes all of you in this room. That's manufacturers, that's distributors, that's NGOs, that's governments, that's all of you guys in this room. And in addition to engaging you all, we really love to hear your feedback, and that really helps us improve the quality assurance service that we will be providing to the sector. And it probably goes without saying that quality is extremely important for consumers and buyers in this market. And here really is some of the evidence that show why quality assurance just deliver better user experience in a couple of different ways. They just have fewer product breakdowns, they provide better warranties, they have better after-sales services. And so if you look at the chart on the right, look at across all different type of product, really, I think it's demonstrating that quality verified product or certified product, it just have a fewer breakdown. And I think it's worth noting that when we're doing this survey, when we look at non-quality, non-certified product with no warranty, the cost to repair those products is actually twice more than the certified product. And so there is a huge financial and cost implication for user when they're using the non-certified or non-quality verified product. QA has been playing a pretty foundational role in helping the off-grid solar market to grow. And today we're seeing that the cumulative sale of certified product continue to increase pretty rapidly in the past 10 years, right? And today, I think more than 60 million of VeraSol certified product has been sold globally. At the same time that we're seeing the demand for certification also continue to increase. And currently there's 250 solar energy kits they're currently certified, and if you look at the year-by-year data, you will see it's a pretty steady increase every year, right? And the only dip that you are seeing there is the 2021, and we think that dip is actually caused by the COVID-related supply chain disruption, but also based on the VeraSol extension policy. A lot of countries in the world has already adopted or in the process of adopting quality standards for solar energy kits. I think roughly there's around 16 different countries that list on the map right now that have quality standard. And quality standard really help these governments protect their market, protect their consumer by keeping the worst quality, the bad quality product out of the market. We also work with development programs a lot to help them adopt quality assurance into their program design. We currently work with 15 development program and financing program, and they reference the VeraSol testing or certification in their program eligibility criteria. That has resulted in 196 million of funding available to companies with VeraSol certified and tested product. And so we work with these programs, and the result is that we're enabling manufacturers to have access to these funding and financing opportunities. We actually manage a pretty active list of opportunity on the VeraSol website. And so this is the QR code to get information about these active opportunity. And I'll highly encourage everyone who's looking for business or financing opportunity, subscribe to that list. And I think that's all from me. And next, Arnie will be talking everyone through some very exciting things that we see.
Thank you, Elisa. And I'm Arnie Jacobson. I'm director of the Schatz Energy Research Center at Cal Poly Humboldt. Many of you may have known that we were at a university called Humboldt State University but recently the name of the university changed to California State Polytechnic University Humboldt, or Cal Poly Humboldt. And I'm also working very closely with Elisa, co-leading the VeraSol initiative. So I wanted to talk through just a few things that are new and exciting. So one of the things that we've been working on for the last few years, and which was completed this year, is publication of the IEC test methods and standards in Chinese language. And this is, I think, a really important step for making the test methods and standards more accessible to Chinese manufacturers and also Chinese-based test labs and other organizations. So we're really happy about that step. It's also exciting in a way that we didn't really imagine when we started working on this, which is that these are the first IEC documents that have ever been translated into Chinese and been made available through official channels. And so it's a big deal within the IEC as well, and just within China, in terms of setting a precedent for making these types of documents available. And so this is something that we're quite happy about and quite proud that to have been a part of making this happen. And in addition to that, as those documents were translated and published, the Standards Organization, or Standards Administration of China, also adopted those documents on a voluntary basis. So China has now adopted the test methods and standards, which we also think is a big and important step. And in addition, the standards document, the IEC 62257-9-8, has been translated into French, and so it's also that's available through the IEC web store in English and in French. The test methods document we're also looking to translate into French, but we're in the process of revising that document, and so we're looking to have that become available in French with the new edition rather than with the old one. And so making these documents available in multiple languages, we think, is a really important part of supporting the sector, and so something that we'll continue to look to supporting. Another area that we're excited about is expansion of our test laboratory network. This is the existing test lab network. We have 3 laboratories that are focused on carrying out qualification testing currently. And the University of Nairobi we've been working with since 2010 in terms of conducting market surveillance testing. Through funding from the Africa Clean Energy Program, which was supported by the UK government, we've been able to add 3 additional labs to the network, all in sub-Saharan Africa, 1 in Ethiopia, 1 in Nigeria, and 1 in Zambia. And in that process, we were also able to upgrade the facilities at the University of Nairobi. The Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Zambia-based labs are in the final stages of joining the VeraSol test lab network. So not 100% there, but in most cases 90 to 98% there, depending on which lab. So that should those processes should be complete fairly soon. So we're excited about that expansion and all that implies. I think it's also useful for us to acknowledge some of the challenges that we faced in the context of the quality assurance program. I would say one of the biggest one is time to complete testing and certification. We hear that quite frequently from manufacturers, and we're quite aware of the challenges there. The graph here at the bottom shows the median number of days to complete solar energy kit testing. This is for the full quality test method testing. And it shows a trend going back to more or less the beginning of the program. So you can see that testing times now are better than they were in the early years of the program, but they're not as good as they were in maybe 2017, 2018. And so we were making, I think, very good progress up to a point, and then things started to the time for testing started to go in the wrong direction in 2019, 2020, and 2021. There are a few things that have influenced that. One issue is related to lab capacity constraints. There were some changes to the test methods themselves, and anytime there's a transition, it takes a bit of time for people to get good at the new tests, and the new tests were also somewhat more complex, and products are somewhat more complex. And so all of those things contribute to the testing time. And then there were some factors that related to the pandemic that also slowed testing. We have been working to try and support the labs to address that issue. And there have been some challenges associated with the pandemic. You know, the travel policy for entering China during the middle of the pandemic really involved a very long quarantine period that made it really impractical to be able to travel and provide in-person support to test labs there. The quarantine policy is still in place, but the period is not quite as long, and we're hoping that eventually it'll be a bit easier to do that travel, because I think in-person technical support is a really important part of being able to make things happen smoothly. We've been doing our best to provide remote support to all of the labs. I think we've made a little bit of progress. If you look at the data for so far in 2022, the testing times have been a little bit better than they were in prior years, so hopefully we're perhaps turning a corner there, but I think it's an issue that we still need to continue to pay attention to, and we will continue to do that. Another challenge that we've seen related to the pandemic in the sector is just associated with supply chain disruption. That, of course, is affecting all manufacturers in the sector, and there are linkages to the quality assurance dimension of things that we have to pay attention to in relationship to that. One of the big issues is that if manufacturers are facing supply chain disruption, that might mean that it's difficult for them to have sufficient stock in order to initiate testing, for example, if they need to renew the status of their product. It also can mean that they manufactured their product in a particular way with particular set of components, and they're not able to get a particular component. They have to make a switch. Maybe they have to change a solar module, or they have to change some of the electronic components on the circuit board. And so that, depending on what the changes are, normally that would trigger a need to retest, and that has been created some challenges for manufacturers as well. We've done our best to work with manufacturers and to create a framework that helps address that issue. Our hope is that this is a temporary issue, but we understand it's not fully resolved for manufacturers even at this point. I guess this is both a success and a challenge, which is that there's been an incredible amount of demand for support, policy support to governments in relationship to QA. There's just a lot of interest among governments in this area, in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions of the world as well. And our team has worked quite hard to engage when those inquiries come in and to support governments in standards adoption and implementation. But the volume of interest also creates its own set of challenges for our team, just because we don't have infinite resources to support that engagement. But in any case, these are some of the things that we've been engaging with. I guess another challenge associated with providing the support was during the pandemic, that support had to move to a remote basis. It's now moving back to more in-person support, or maybe hybrid, where some of it's in-person and some of it is remote. And so I think we're moving into a better regime in that regard. And some of the people who have been providing that support are here in the room, so really want to acknowledge the good work of Mr. Hamadou and Charles Muchunku, who have played a really important role in that. Also historically, Ibrar has been quite important in providing that kind of support in Pakistan. And there's others on our team as well who are not here, actually Chris who just came in as a key person in that, as well as others from our team who are not here. So really appreciate the work that team has been doing. What's next? There's a lot of what's next. Want to spend a bit of time here, and one of the things that we're looking at doing is revising the test methods and standards. They're both of those documents are we think are in a good position for being revised, and we're looking at a timeline for doing that. It'll of course take some time to get through the IEC process because those documents sit with the IEC. We have to work through all of those processes. We're in the process of revising the documents now. We'll be looking for feedback. We're going to basically release a document quite soon that will have a summary of some of the key changes that we're looking at, and we'll be looking for feedback from the sector in relationship to that. We'll take that feedback and then feed that back into the process before submitting revised versions to the IEC for the IEC process. And so this timeline, of course, is indicative, subject to change. The IEC process itself is one that has its own pace, and we're not 100% in control of that. We'll move things through as quickly as we can, but things take their time. So wanted to talk about one, I think, pretty significant change that we're considering. These are all things that are being considered. They're not a done deal, and we're interested in feedback on them. But here's one, which is we're considering reducing the sample size for qualification testing, so that otherwise known as QTM testing, from the current levels, which the sample size required for each test for pico-solar products is 6, and the sample size for solar home system kits is 4. And then when you go to renew a product, the sample size is 2. And so we're looking at basically reducing the sample size for the QTM testing to 2. So it would be sample size 2 for the qualification testing, and it would be sample size 2 for renewal. Everything is 2. And that, I think, will do a few different things. One is that it could reduce the cost of testing for the QTM testing because the lab has fewer samples to process and to test. 2 is that it could reduce the time required to complete testing to the degree that the time that complete testing is slowed by lab capacity. If there's less work for the lab to do in terms of each product, that could speed things up a little bit in terms of time to complete testing. And then it will also simplify the certification process because one big part of the certification process is making a test plan for each stage of testing. And if the sample size is an important part of that, if that's all simplified and everything is the same, it will really speed up that part of the process as well. So there are some benefits to this. I guess people might ask the question, though, you were testing at a sample size 4 or 6 for a reason. Can we feel confident that reducing the sample size, you'll still have the same level of rigor and same level of assurance that was there before? And so I want to talk through why we think this might be something that could be done. So the rationale essentially is that we're seeing the variability of test results within a given sample of products from manufacturers has been reducing over time. So that's essentially indicating that the tolerances, manufacturing tolerances, have been tightened over time. Manufacturers are able to design products that have less variability from unit to unit than they did in the past. I'm going to show you some data that we've been looking at that is related to that. The data are a little bit complex, so bear with me. We'll do our best to explain. So this is a graph that is essentially showing actually, let me just go back. Is this a laser pointer? No. Maybe here? Yeah. So this is showing the percent of combinations, and this is showing the percent deviation from the true mean. But what essentially it's showing is the degree of variability that you're seeing from one sample to another within a given product across the entire set of products that we're testing. And so a wider bar indicates more variability between samples, and a narrower bar indicates less variability. And if you have less variability, you can test fewer samples and still have confidence that you're getting the correct result, or a result that is closer to the true mean across the entire population of the products that are being manufactured. And what we're seeing is that this is just showing examples for 3 different product metrics. One is the daily solar runtime for a product. This is a lighting-related metric. It's the color rendering index, and then the third is the battery performance, or the battery durability, in relationship to it's the percentage of capacity loss that you're seeing during the battery durability test, and so it's a metric of how robust the battery is. And so, and then in terms of what's being shown, this is for the period from 2014 to 2016, all the products that were tested then. This is the period from 2017 to 2019, and this is the test since 2020. And so what we're seeing is a trend where across several different metrics, we're seeing a pretty significant decline in variability, which means that manufacturers are making products with much tighter tolerances than they were before. And then for some metrics, the change is not very much, but they were already very tight. And so they haven't gotten tighter, but maybe that's not a problem. This is just for 3 metrics. This is showing it for lots more metrics. So we're seeing this kind of trend across a lot of different metrics in the sector. And what you can see is that since the tests we've conducted since 2020, we're seeing really tight tolerances across a whole range of different metrics. And that is what gives us confidence to say we could reduce the sample size and still be confident in the outcomes. We didn't feel that way in 2014, 2016, but now we're seeing this essentially advance in the sector with respect to that. And so we believe that the level of variability observed since 2020 could enable a reduction in sample size without decreasing the rigor of the assessment. So we're very data-driven, and the data are telling us that this is a possibility. What are the implications of making that change? So this is a graph that shows the percentage of products that would have had a different outcome with respect to passing and failing with a smaller sample size. And this is based on the products that have been tested since 2020. And so basically what we did was we took the result. Let's say the sample size for that result was 6. We did some analysis to say, let's just say we had only tested 2 instead of 6. What would the result have been? And we did it for all the different combinations, because if we had 6, it could have been any of those 6 that got picked, and we looked at all of the combinations. And so we looked at that for a sample size 2, a sample size 3, a sample size 4, and a sample size 5, just to see what it would have been for various sample size relative to what the original sample size was. And what this is showing is the percentage of combinations with a change in the result. And what's important to note is that the maximum that we're seeing here is 2%. So it's saying 98% of products, we're not seeing any change. And in some cases, depending on what the metric is, 100% of the products, we're not seeing any change. But in no case did we see more than 2% had a change. And we also see that there's not that much difference. Let's say that we said we wanted to reduce the sample size to 3 instead of to 2. We're not seeing that much benefit in going from 3 to 2. And so all of that is giving us some confidence that a sample size 2 could be the right answer. It certainly is the answer that creates the simplest outcome. And there would be some changes in terms of, in some cases, products that would have failed will pass. and in some cases, products that would have passed will fail, but those percentages are very small. And so the question is, are we willing to take that risk? We'll miss a few. There's a few cases where manufacturers will submit a product that would have passed with a larger sample size, but would fail in this case, but it's a really small fraction of the total. And so we're certainly interested in getting feedback from the sector on this point. Are people comfortable with taking this type of step or not? But from our perspective, the data indicate that this is certainly something that can be considered. That's not the only thing we're thinking about. That's the only one I'm going to talk about in that level of detail. But, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is fantastic. Great to see the data and the analysis. Any idea in terms of the benefits, the reduction to cost and time, what it would mean to help companies assess this risk versus the possible benefits that are there?
In terms of the reduction in time for testing, I don't think we can really estimate that, because that is more really a function of, the amount of time that it takes to complete each test doesn't change. It's just the number of samples that change. So if labs are capacity constrained in some way, it might free them up to be able to get through the volume of testing more quickly. Mm-hmm. But that's a pretty hard thing to estimate. So I don't know that we could provide an estimate of that. And even if we did, it might not come to pass that's exactly how it would play out. In terms of the cost, we can estimate what that is, because the cost of testing, doing a renewal test is a sample size too. So it's just the difference between the cost of doing a QTM test now and the cost of doing a renewal test would be a reasonable way of estimating the change in the cost. And so that's certainly information we can provide.
Cool.
Oh, Meg has a, yeah.
Companies will also not have to provide as many samples, not have to ship as many samples, so there's some other cost reductions for companies as well.
Yeah.
My sense is that most companies would find this acceptable and interesting, but of course, without speaking to each of them, it's hard to say. You said you were planning to do a consultation on this and get feedback. What does that look like? And, yeah.
We're coming to that.
Thanks.
And I guess the thing that I want to emphasize is that the manufacturers are not our only stakeholder in this. So I would not be at all surprised if manufacturers say, yes, we love this. But we want to hear from other stakeholders as well, who may have a different perspective. So we're interested in feedback across the sector. Some other things that we're thinking about. Right now, the truth in advertising tolerance is 15%. We're thinking of tightening that to 10%. Really for the same reason. If manufacturers' tolerances are tighter, they should be able to hit a 10% truth in advertising tolerance. And we set that 15% tolerance back in 2009 and really haven't changed it. We think that can be tightened at this point. So that's another thing that is being considered. We're also, we've heard a lot of feedback from the sector about interest to extend the period of validity for test results from 2 years to 3 years. We have some probably more reservations about that than some of the other things we've discussed so far, but that is something that is being considered, and we're interested in feedback across the sector on that point as well. And there's others as well. We will be releasing a document outlining changes under consideration. We're looking at getting that out next month, meaning November, and we'll have a time frame for providing feedback, and then we'll use that feedback to inform final version of a draft that would be submitted through the IEC. So that's where we are on that. There's a few other things that I think are worth noting. Oops, excuse me. One is that there are some new documents that we have put out that relate to quality assurance. One is that there is a framework for component-based solar energy systems that consists of 3 documents. One is basically a quality assurance framework overview for component-based systems. There's also system design guidelines and system installation guidelines. These are documents that were originally developed through, with support from the World Bank for a program in Uganda. And then we worked both with the original authors of those documents as well as partners at the World Bank to turn them into more generic documents that can be used across a number of different countries. And so these are now available on the VeraSol website. They're also available on the World Bank's, on the Lighting Global website. In addition, there is a quality assurance framework for public facilities that was developed through the Lighting Africa program of the World Bank, and that document is also available online on the World Bank's website. So these are just resources that are available for companies, for programs, for governments that are interested to utilize them. So we want to make sure that people know that they're out there. Yeah.
Thank you. Well done and congratulations for another suite of standards. I now have a bit more appreciation for the work involved, and I realize that these are particularly complex ones, I imagine, so kudos for that. We've seen the exhibition. There's quite a few what's being called like power station, solar generator, solar inverter. To what extent are these kind of in scope? Or do these products kind of fit into the scope of these versus, needing a kind of a new standard?
So for things that are component-based systems, they would fit into these types of frameworks. But you're actually previewing my next slide.
Sorry.
Which is, these are potential areas for VeraSol scope expansion. Some of these things are things that we're already working on to some degree. And some of them are maybe at an earlier stage, or they're a concept or an idea. And one of the things that we want to do with most of the rest of the session is get feedback on where should we be going. One is certification for off-grid and weak grid refrigeration systems. And so that's something that there's some activity underway in that area. A second is moving forward with some things related to solar water pump test methods. And one of the possibilities there is taking the test methods that have been developed through the Global LEAP program, combining them with an existing document that is already an IEC document that was published in 2011, is a bit out of date, basically updating that document so that there would be a set of test methods in an IEC document for solar water pumps. Test methods and test methods development and testing for new productive use appliances beyond refrigeration and solar water pumps is another area of activity. GOGLA has been working with many in the sector around this interoperability framework, and there's been interest expressed to have the VeraSol program play a role in determining whether or not products meet those requirements. So that's another area that we could work or focus on. And certification of solar home system kits, or just systems more broadly that have AC outputs, which might be similar to some of the products that people are seeing that are basically the solar-based generators that people are talking about, basically battery systems with inverters that are being sold as complete packages, and so having a framework for that. So these are just some of the areas that we could consider. We can't do everything at once, and so there is some interest in hearing what people's feedback is in respect to these sorts of areas. So I think at this point, we're moving over to discussion. I'll pass things back over to Naya.
Thanks, Arnie. Thanks, Elisa. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited about all of the things that are coming downstream. And I think it's also worth just pausing and giving a round of applause to both Arnie and Elisa for the work that they've done. They've talked about increasing efficiency, reducing cost, localizing testing. I mean, this is all work that I know they continue to work tirelessly on.
One thing to note is that Lisa and I are part of that, but there's a lot of other people here in the room
Good point.
who are doing most of that.
So please stand up. We'd also want to clap for you as well, everybody who's working very closely with. Don't be shy, Chris. Applause belong to you. Okay, excellent. So pull up your phones again. We're going to do a quick poll before we jump into more of an interactive Q&A. So, based on the last slide about the potential new areas of focus, would love to hear from you. If you had to prioritize one activity for solar energy kits, what would it be? I can tell who's not voting and who's sleeping. Okay, interesting. So we have accelerating testing and certification timeline, interoperability, scope expansion. Okay. Yeah, this is true. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Timeline, yeah. Work faster. No breaks. No vacation. Okay. Very interesting. And then, of course, this is where, as Arnie mentioned, we're going to be reaching out to other stakeholders as well to get their input, right? I think we can move on to the next question, please. Yeah, so in terms of ranking technologies, which ones would you most like to see VeraSol start or continue working on? I personally have a strong bias for electric pressure cookers, and I think everybody should be focused on cooking.
It's very low.
I know. This is breaking my heart. No bias. All right, irrigation, interesting, yeah, very timely. I know. There is a special gift for everybody who votes for e-cooking. Yeah. We have free electric pressure cookers at our booth. Interesting, irrigation and AC output head-to-head. Kind of linked to interoperability, really. Yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for your input. So now I'm going to invite back Elisa and Arnie up to the stage for Q&A. Do we have another mic in the room, or is it just this one? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so there's two of us. We'll walk around and hand you the mic. But yes, any questions, comments, reactions, this is the time. Don't make me pick on you for the questions.
Thanks. I was curious whether the approach to use to determine what products to test should be, what's the right term? I mean, these surveys that Google does shows you sales for different kinds of products, so appliances, whether it's pumps or TVs or fridges. And so then it gives you an indication of the number of new products in the market. So I think where you have a significant number of products, I think that should be priority. So that, I mean, of course, you know, the thing about certification, if you're still innovating, then you kind of, the standards might come too quickly.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm happy to respond to that. And I think for us, there's a couple different methodology that we use, right? And typically, you know, we do roll out certain surveys to solar energy companies to kind of ask them, like, what is their customer expecting to buy from them in the next 3 to 5 years. So essentially, kind of as a way to kind of assess, like, what's the market demand for some of these products. And then through the Google sales data collection, we kind of get a sense of, like, what's the volume of product being sold in the market, right? And I think the third layer of this is that we work with development program financier investors a lot. And so, like, depends on, like, where the money is flowing, we kind of, like, make a prediction in some way, right, to kind of see, like, which product group might be taken up, and you know, really trying to scale it up in the future. And so part of it is, like, based on stakeholder feedback, part of it's based on data, and part of it is really about, like, you know, looking at the crystal ball and trying to guess for the future. But I guess, like, in terms of product testing, there are a couple different purposes that we test product for too. I think, like, for the more mature product, like solar energy lighting, Pico Solar Kits, you know, like, we're really going through this certification process because they're quite mature, quite, you know, common in the market these days. But I think, like, the other type of testing we do really is, like, trying to help super nascent product, right, in the market, and trying to just assess their performance and quality, and, like, you know, what are they even, right, in the market. And so there's this, like, information sharing, data sharing purpose to our testing too. And so I would say, like, overall, we're kind of addressing product at different kind of maturity level using different type of certification or testing and different, like, QA intervention to help support the market.
Hi. So VeraSol has been sort of, and before that, like Think Global, the quality partner for the sector, right? You're the ones who are telling us what's good quality, what's bad quality in terms of the product. Do you see your role going beyond just certifying or verifying quality for products into other aspects of the sector that do need someone to regulate and sort of give us some sort of assurances? For example, some of the numbers we see being reported about the potential for carbon credits against some of the appliances, you know, would you work with others to do that, or do you see VeraSol going beyond the product?
You want to take that?
I can start. I think that certainly there's lots of things that could be interesting to do in the sector, and so I think yes, we're open to some of those ideas, and we want to explore them. We would, of course, want to make sure that anything that we do is really focused on adding value to the sector, and we also want to make sure that we have the capacity to take it on. So we don't want to try and take things on before we're ready to really add value, and to do it in a way that our team is well situated to do that. But certainly there's a number of other things beyond just quality and safety that and a product focus that could be interesting.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. I think there are a couple ideas that people kind of, like, float around for certification, and I think, like, one, maybe it's, like, closer to us. It's actually, I think, like, Arnie also mentioned that for the component-based system, the certification for skill set, right? Like, people who can do inspection, people who can do installation, and so, like, how do we find those people and also certify that their skill set is, like, up to the standard to deliver these high-quality service to, you know, customer. And so I think that could be one of the area that we look into. But I think there are other ideas that came up in the past too. For example, like certification based on, like, the company, right? And so I think this one thing that we saw in the Kenya consumer research study, that a company that has quality verified product actually demonstrate that their other product, even though they're not quality verified, they're still, like, you know, to be pretty good quality, right? And so, like, I guess like these are all the different things that we could be considering, but I guess like, for example, like to do any of these certifications, just like one, I feel like I need to do a little bit more like research to see if that makes sense, right? Because that model potentially could work in Kenya, which is one of the market that's like very developed and has been, you know, like looking at standards like for years. Would this model also work for other more nascent market, for example?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to this point, not a question. Google also manages the Consumer Protection Code, which is you know, it has 6 principles, one of which is good product quality, and that aligns with the VeraSol certification. You know, but it also has, you know, good customer service, fair and respectful treatment, responsible sales and pricing, personal data privacy. And a couple of years ago, we defined the standards, and there was a self-assessment tool for companies to assess, and we had recommended that they report it to their investor. We've now launched a third-party assessment tool with the ratings agency MFR doing that. You know, it's a mini audit of companies along all of these lines, and there's some opportunity there to look at kind of companies' policies and practices. You know, as it relates to even product quality. So, I know one of the challenges of the program has been looking at warranty. For example, you know, I think there's an opportunity there to have somebody else that's, you know, in company, in country, asking questions and doing a check there. So I think that's it can be, you know, a nice complement and fit with the VeraSol program as well. Colin.
Good afternoon. So I'm just curious. While I see there are a lot of efforts for VeraSol to support governments to adopt quality standards, have you been thinking of maybe making a follow-up to say, for those national governments that have adopted quality standards, have there been a decline on influx of non-quality verified products? I'm saying this because I know in some of the countries that I've worked, the national governments just don't progress further, rather than beyond adopting the standards. They don't do any enforcement. So,
I guess I'll say a couple of things. One is that adoption of standards without implementation of them doesn't do anything, and so it really is necessary to go to that next step. So in terms of rigorous assessment to determine if a decline in non-quality verified products has occurred, I would say that in most places we don't have solid data, but there have been some examples where there have been some studies that give us at least some indication of that. I think Kenya is one country where there is at least some evidence that indicates that the market share for quality verified products has increased in Kenya and is higher than it is in a lot of other markets. But in most countries there isn't really careful data to be able to assess that. We also have some others on our team who might want to comment on that. I don't know, Chris or Charles or Hamadou, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think there are 2 elements. The adoption part, where we help governments adopt the standard as a national standard, and then the implementation part. And different countries enforce standards in different ways. In some cases, it's voluntary. In some cases, the regulator does it. In some cases, it's the Standards Bureau that's responsible. In some cases, you have pre-export verification of conformity as a model. In other cases, it's local verification of conformity. So it varies from country to country. So I think a lot of our work has been focused mostly on the adoption side. And the governments who are really proactive, those are the ones maybe we've engaged a bit more to start looking at implementation approaches. And of course, if the regulator takes it up, the first thing they request is, can we do a baseline assessment? Let's know what is the quality baseline in the market when we start. And then these are the tools we're going to use for enforcement. And then after a couple of years, then they look at it again. They do another survey and see, what progress are we making. but these are long-term things, and we hope to continue doing them.
I hear you, Charles, but maybe this is just food for thought. And I'm looking for value for money standpoint. So what's the use of a national government adopting standards and then it doesn't enforce?
I would say that where we are is at step one with a lot of governments out of many steps that need to be taken. So if we stop where we are, then maybe not so much value. But the idea is not to stop where we are. And in countries that have taken some additional steps, and I would think Kenya is one good example, we have seen some value.
Yes, I'm from Pakistan. We have a World Bank funded project of $30 million for 200,000 solar home systems. So initially, because of the high cost, plug and play and import of materials, so we have now decided to be a component-based solar home system. And our team leader is Oliver Knight, who suggested us that you should have VeraSol standards. So how can you support us in implementing for these 200,000 solar home systems on component-based?
So earlier this year, we did publish a framework for quality assurance for component-based systems. I think maybe we had shared earlier drafts of that with you or some of your colleagues, but now that framework is fully published and available. So that's something that could be available to support that activity on your side.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And those documents are available through the VeraSol website, and also we can, since you're here in the room, we can also point you to them.
That's why I'm waiting after meeting.
Yeah.
To discuss about.
Yeah.
So we have time for one or two more questions.
If I may, again. I'm curious about the funding landscape. I think it is a really exciting kind of program of work that you're kind of looking to do, expanding all these different areas. For both polls, I would have liked to tick all of the above. Of course, a lot is funding dependent. You know, we see that donor interests in QA kind of ebbs and flows. Curious, kind of what the discussions you're having now and where the money is interested at. Hand it to Elisa.
Not sure if I quite know the answer to this. But I think based on the discussion that we heard from the past couple of days, right? I think everyone has this huge interest and focus on productive use equipment, and obviously that's covers so many different things, right? And so again, I think getting back to the earlier question of what type of product that we decide to test, or what type of product that we decide to focus certification for, right? It's again, based on the data that we're seeing from the sales data we collected from the sector, but also kind of like looking at where development programs are pointing their money at, right? And for us, I think like at least on the appliances and productive use side, we have a lot of interest of continue with our work on off-grid and we-grid refrigerator, and that's already something that's happening, right? We just create this draft quality standards for off-grid refrigerator. And that's currently we're in the process of revising, but also like getting feedback from the stakeholder. But once that document finalized, I think like we're kind of looking into whether we can launch a certification program, piloting a certification program for off-grid refrigerator. And so that's gonna be one of the, upcoming activity that you all can be expecting. And I think the other product category that we also put in quite a bit of focus on is actually solar water pump work. And so obviously starting with the test method development, the testing, data sharing of like solar water pump, but I think there's also a potential to kind of look into if there is a market or if there is a demand for certifying solar water pump. And so I think that will be another possibility. And obviously there's a whole lot of different thing that's also out there, also very important. And so like, I think taking some of the feedback from the room today, right, the ranking that we do, I think that would be kind of like taking back to the team, having some internal discussion and see like what it's possible to tackle in the next couple of years.
Any last questions or comments? We literally have 1 minute. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been a very informative session. There's a lot of exciting things coming down the line. Please continue to spread the word, right? And I think the important thing to remember at the end of the day, right, we're all working towards making sure consumers are protected and getting good quality products. Yeah, and thank you to Elisa and Arnie. Any last parting shots before we break? No?
Thank you all for your interest.